Picture the flight line at Edwards Air Force Base in the early 1990s. Two prototypes sit under the desert sun, each one a glimpse of a very different future. One looks like the natural evolution of American air power, all sharp lines and aggressive confidence. The other, well, it barely looks real. Long, predatory, almost silent in its presence, shaped like it was sketched by someone who knew too much about the next century. Pilots walked past it and slowed down without meaning to. Engineers stared at its diamond wings like they were staring at a cheat code. That was Northrop's YF-23, the jet many believed was too advanced for its time. Its rival, the YF-22, wasn't shy about what it wanted to be. It showed off. It turned hard. It fired missiles during testing and made sure everyone watched. The YF-23 didn't need theatrics. It moved with the kind of smooth, effortless confidence that makes you wonder if speed and stealth were the only two things it cared about. So what really happened out there? Why did the radical fighter fall to the safer choice? And what does the decision reveal about how America chooses the machines that guard its skies? Before we begin, hit subscribe so you don't miss more deep dive stories like this. To understand why the YF-23 existed at all, you have to rewind to the late Cold War. The United States had dominated the skies for years, but the Soviet Union was catching up fast. The Su-27 and MiG-29 weren't just new fighters. They were the first real signs that the F-15's long reign as the air superiority king wouldn't last forever. Soviet radar networks were expanding. Long-range missiles were improving. Surface-to-air systems were getting smarter. If the next war ever broke out, America's advantage could disappear before the first sortie. So the Air Force created the Advanced Tactical Fighter Program, a massive, high-stakes hunt for a jet that could fight in a world where being seen meant being killed. The requirements were brutal. Supercruise above Mach 1 without afterburner. Radar cross-section low enough to slip past the newest Soviet arrays. Agility that could survive a knife fight if stealth ever failed. And the range to cross continents without help. It wasn't just a fighter competition. It was a strategic bet worth tens of billions. Whoever won the contract would control the future of American air dominance for the next 50 years. Every major defense contractor wanted in, but only two prototypes made it to the final flight line: Lockheed's YF-22 and Northrop's YF-23. Two opposite answers to the same question. What does the next king of the sky look like? Lockheed entered the fight with a design that felt familiar, even if it looked futuristic. The YF-22 kept the classic fighter posture: twin tails, powerful control surfaces, and a muscular airframe shaped to handle violent maneuvers. Its designers believed dogfights would never truly die. Radar might fail. Electronic warfare might scramble sensors. In that scenario, the jet that could turn inside the enemy still won. Thrust vectoring gave the YF-22 that edge, letting pilots force the nose wherever they wanted, even at low speeds. Northrop thought differently. Their team had spent years working on Tacit Blue and the B-2. They lived in the world of shapes that avoided radar, surfaces that bent and redirected energy, and structures designed for silence over spectacle. The YF-23 came from that lineage. A long, diamond-shaped wing, a blended fuselage, a V-shaped tail that reduced the radar signature from almost every angle. It was built to be seen last, shoot first, and vanish before the opponent's radar could complete a second sweep. On paper, both jets hit the Air Force's goals: stealth, speed, internal weapons, supercruise. But their personalities couldn't have been more different. The YF-22 wanted to win a fight even when everything went wrong. The YF-23 wanted to design a world where getting into that fight was a failure of planning. The real question was which future the Air Force believed in more. To appreciate the YF-23, you have to start with its silhouette. Nothing about it looked accidental. The entire airframe was sculpted around the idea that radar, heat, and drag were the real enemies. The diamond wing wasn't just stylish. It controlled airflow with remarkable efficiency at high speed and distributed radar reflections across a wider surface. The twin tail surfaces, canted outward, reduced vertical radar returns and helped stabilize the aircraft without the big radar-catching shapes found on older jets. Then came the engine integration. Instead of exposing the exhaust nozzles, Northrop buried them deep in the airframe. This shielded the hot metal from infrared sensors and mixed cooler air into the jet plume before it exited the aircraft. It didn't just reduce heat signature. It lowered the chance of missile lock. The design also hid the compressor faces from the front, one of the strongest radar-reflecting components on any fighter. Performance matched the engineering philosophy. The YF-23 supercruised above Mach 1.4 in testing, with estimates placing its top end comfortably beyond Mach 2. It held energy smoothly, climbing and accelerating without the abrupt movements of its rival. Pilots described the handling as stable, calm, and surprisingly gentle at high speed. It was less dramatic, but in air combat, that stability meant predictability and control. The trade-off was agility. Without thrust vectoring, the YF-23 couldn't pivot its nose as sharply as the YF-22. It wasn't built for airshow theatrics. It was built to kill from distances so long the enemy never got to see the aircraft that fired the shot. Northrop's message was clear. Dogfighting was the past. Long-range invisible dominance was the future. And the YF-23 was already living in that future. Once flight testing began at Edwards, both jets started revealing their strengths. The YF-23 flew quietly and consistently. It completed 6 flights in a single day during the evaluation period, an impressive indicator of simplicity and reliability. Both prototypes, one with the Pratt & Whitney F119 and the other with the YF-120, supercruised with ease. Test pilots praised its stability at high speed, its cool running temperatures, and its smooth behavior during rapid transitions. Nothing about the jet felt rushed. It felt refined. But the Air Force wasn't judging refinement alone. Lockheed understood something fundamental. Flight tests aren't just technical evaluations. They're performances. They're where generals, program officers, and Pentagon brass witness not only data, but also confidence. So Lockheed made sure the YF-22 delivered a show worth remembering. The YF-22 fired AIM-9 and AIM-120 missiles during the competition. The YF-23 never demonstrated a live missile shot. The YF-22 pulled high-alpha maneuvers that physically stunned spectators. The YF-23 didn't even try. Its maneuvering was smooth, efficient, and understated, which made it look less aggressive even though it met the same aerodynamic performance thresholds required by the Air Force. The turning point came down to perception. When Lockheed's jet snapped into a tight turn using thrust vectoring, it proved something hard to measure with spreadsheets. It showed potential dominance in a close-range fight. It showed controllability beyond anything flying at the time. The YF-23 countered with speed, stealth, and range, but those qualities were invisible to the naked eye. Both jets met or exceeded requirements, but only one made the evaluators lean forward and whisper to each other while the afterburners faded in the distance. In a competition this close, spectacle mattered, and the YF-22 knew exactly how to deliver it. When the Air Force announced its decision in 1991, officials made it clear that both prototypes met or exceeded program requirements. The YF-23 was faster, it was stealthier, it supercruised more efficiently, it had greater range and a larger internal weapons bay. On paper, the aircraft offered clear advantages for long-range air dominance. But the Air Force did not choose the jet that looked better on charts. It chose the jet that felt lower risk. The YF-22 fired missiles during the competition. The YF-23 did not. The YF-22 demonstrated extreme agility through thrust vectoring. The YF-23 relied on traditional aerodynamic control. The YF-22 performed high-alpha demonstrations that showed controllability in unpredictable conditions. The YF-23 focused on stability and smoothness, which were harder to evaluate visually. There were industrial factors as well. Lockheed had not won a major fighter contract since the 1970s. Northrop had already secured the B-2 bomber and was under intense cost scrutiny. The Pentagon also believed Lockheed's design was more adaptable to Navy needs, partly due to its control authority during low-speed, high-angle operations. The Air Force wanted a jet that could survive both the long-range stealth fight and the unexpected close-in merge. The YF-22 proved it could do both. The YF-23 showed it could dominate at range but revealed little about its knife fight potential. In a risk-averse environment, that difference mattered. The YF-23 prototypes were only technology demonstrators. If selected, the production F-23 would have differed significantly. Northrop planned major upgrades that never materialized. The flight control system would have been refined. The radar-absorbent coatings would have been modernized. The cockpit would have been redesigned with a larger display suite and improved pilot ergonomics. Engine integration would have been optimized as well. The GE YF-120, which powered one prototype, offered variable cycle performance that exceeded the Pratt & Whitney engine in fuel efficiency during certain regimes. Northrop expected the F-23 to supercruise at higher speeds and with longer endurance than the Raptor. The company even explored a naval variant for the Navy's NATF program. The long, stable airframe and high internal fuel loads made the YF-23 appealing for long-range intercept missions over the Pacific, although the NATF requirement was ultimately canceled. None of these ideas moved forward once the YF-22 was selected. The prototypes were flown a few more times, then grounded. The aircraft that could have become America's longest-range stealth fighter never reached full development. Its potential remained trapped in engineering studies and internal documents that were never completed. Imagining an Air Force built around the F-23 reveals how different modern air combat might look. The aircraft's lower radar signature would have improved survivability against advanced surface-to-air systems introduced in the 2000s. Its longer range would have reshaped patrol routes, reducing tanker requirements and enabling deeper penetration missions without support aircraft. In air-to-air roles, the F-23 would likely have shifted doctrine toward first-shot engagements at extreme distances. Its speed and energy retention made it ideal for high-altitude intercepts against bombers, cruise missile carriers, or high-value targets. Some analysts believe that the F-23's aerodynamic efficiency would have allowed faster missile kinematics at launch, increasing the reach of weapons like the AIM-120. A naval F-23 could have created a very different landscape for carrier aviation. Its range and stealth would have been valuable in Pacific scenarios where long distances dominate planning. Of course, agility would always have remained the unknown. The F-22 matured into a platform with exceptional close-in capability. The F-23 might have needed further control authority upgrades, thrust vectoring integration, or different control surfaces to match that performance. The true impact is impossible to know. The F-23 might have become the most feared interceptor ever built, or it might have demanded expensive redesigns to fulfill all mission types. Even though it lost, the YF-23's influence did not disappear. Modern stealth design continues to favor blended surfaces, broad facet transitions, and concealed exhaust signatures that resemble concepts tested on the Black Widow. Many sixth-generation fighter renderings share traits with the YF-23's low observability philosophy, including long planform shaping and deeply buried propulsion. Northrop's work on the YF-23 informed later unmanned aircraft programs as well. Lessons from its cooling, shaping, and airflow strategies appear in modern stealth drones and reconnaissance platforms. The aircraft itself became a legend. One YF-23 now sits at the National Museum of the United States Air Force. The other rests at the Western Museum of Flight. Aviation enthusiasts often crowd around them, more than the F-22 on display nearby. The jet represents a path not taken. A reminder that advanced engineering does not always win when risk, politics, and doctrine collide. The YF-23 may never have become the Raptor's rival in service, but its fingerprints appear across the evolution of stealth aviation. The YF-23 didn't lose because it lacked brilliance. It lost because the Air Force chose certainty over potential. The Black Widow proved that even the most advanced ideas can fall to the safer path. Yet its legacy lives quietly in the shadows of every stealth jet that followed, a reminder that some of the greatest fighters in history never fired a single shot.